about wildfires, and right here in this area is where they happened. One of them sort of a spiritual story, and you know it's a little reluctant to even tell you, but I will.
Okay, we're rolling.
Okay, the one story is this fire started down here, and of course it's moving uphill, and it's creating lots of energy, burning up lots of feed, and I'm quite concerned about what's happened. My boy and I comes up here to monitor the fire, and we get up ahead of the fire and we go down to what we call Rabbit Water, and we spend a little time there. And I told my boy, I said, the only way this fire will stop is if we ask the Lord to help us. I said, he's going to have to bring us some rain. I said, that's the only way we can get this thing to stop. And so we knelt down and said a prayer, and then we got up and got back to our car. But when we got back, we got in our car and started to move, and we could see the fire had almost closed in on us to where we had no access out of the fire. But we did make it out and went up past, went sort of towards the mountain. And you know, we've traveled maybe a mile from the place where we'd actually knelt down and said a prayer. And my boy says, look, there's another fire starting there, and there's another fire starting over here. And what was happening is the lightning had struck in about 3 or 4 places and started new fires. So the whole side of the mountain was starting with new fires. And I said, well, there was no clouds in the sky before now, but I could see a few clouds gathering around, and then this lightning was starting these new fires, and my boy was quite concerned about what was happening. And I said, well, the good Lord's got to bring a storm in here to put the fire out. And I had no more than said that, and maybe went another 1/4 of a mile. And raindrops come out of the sky. It's probably about as like inches, or an inch or two around. They just, big globs of water come down. In a few seconds, the fire was out. Everything was out. It was all over in just you know, probably less than a minute. Anyway, that was a blessing to me, a blessing to this ranch, and a blessing for everything that lives here. Because if that fire would have moved forward, it would have went right up over the top of the mountain and destroyed lots of feed and lots of habitat. So anyway, that's one of the blessings. That's one story. I want to tell you another story. Over here on this side, there was another fire started about a week later. And it started right down here, and that fire started to go up this side of the area. And the same thing was happening. It was building up fuel. The fire was building up heat and spreading out and moving towards the mountain, and using, you know, burning up habitat and feed. And I thought, well, the good Lord helped me the other day. I guess I better do something on my own. So I had a little dozer moved in, and I started down the river. I got on that dozer. It was almost dark. I come up along the east side of this fire and just kicked everything out of the road in the bottom of the wash that would burn. I traveled right up along the side of the fire and got up on the top of it and kicked me a little fire break along the existing road, and then I clumb up on top of the hill. Now this would be like in the midnight at night when I get there. So I climb up on top of the hill, and I see this fire move towards my break and die out and die out and die out. Well, I just actually sit in the dozer and go to sleep for a couple of 3 hours, and I get up a little bit before daylight. I look out, and the fire's pretty well gone. Well, that was my action at that point. But let me tell you about BLM's action at that point. BLM had detected the fire. They had called their fire crews in. They had created a fire camp down at the elementary school in Bunkerville. And they had, I don't know, maybe even a couple of thousand men transported into the school area. They had trucks and cats and water tankers and helicopters, and all of those things were staged. And they had even dropped, flew over here and they dropped some men out of their airplane, and they was by parachutes, and they was supposed to be investigating the fire and radioing back to what was all supposed to on. In other words, the federal government was spending millions of dollars of our taxpayer money to put out this fire that I had already put out. And so I get on my tractor and I start moving down through here. I come right down this road here where we're at now, come right around the edge of this fire line right here that you can see right behind me. And there was a couple of Joshua bushes and a little bit of fire left. I just sort of kicked them in out of the road. And I tracked that Caterpillar down towards the river about halfway to Bunkerville. Well, I had been out all night, hadn't had any breakfast or anything, so I parked the tractor on the side of the road. So I called my wife to bring me some breakfast. Well, about 8:30, 9 o'clock, I see coming down the highway, I see BLM are starting to move. They got their forces and their buses and their people that coming out to put out this fire. They'd already been over to the buffet and had dinner. They'd spend their night in the hotels. They had spent the government money. But when they got here, there was no fire to put out. Cliven Bundy had already put the fire out.